Let's continue with Kwame. Kwame, thank you for your patience. Obviously, what's going on there has made the headlines around the world, but you're in the middle of it. In fact, you actually, because of your job, you are with first responders, in some of these medical facilities. How is it looking from your perspective?
Well, Kojo, thanks, and good morning to everybody. Well, I generally agree with most things that the High Commissioner said. It's quite widespread, but you see, I look at this from a historical point of view because I can give a background where when I was a kid, I grew up around the Kent, Belvedere area, when the National Front had originally started around Abbey Wood. So at that time, in those days, there was only one bus from Woolwich down to Erith, and it was a 99 bus, and you wouldn't go on it past, say, 7:30 because of all the nonsense that was going on. And then when I finished university, my first job in management was also in another hotspot when this happened, which was in the, in the Grace area. At that time, what we call the British National Party had reared its head in the South Ockenden space and all that. But then, I'm saying this because you could see pockets. It wasn't that widespread. I mean, when it was concentrated around the Abbeywood, Belmarsh area, it was a small pocket. Everyone knew what was going on there. And then when they moved, the BNP moved to the Essex area as well, everyone knew what was going on there. The difference with what's happening this time is the fact that there is social media and a lot of things are going on social media where people are instigating. So there seems to be some form of background coordination. And this is the background. You see, Kojo, at least you, Raymond and Winston, went to school a bit in the UK. So you would know what I'm saying, that when you go to university campuses currently, you see that the dynamic, when I was in university in the UK, is changing gradually. You see a lot more minorities. And when I say minorities, I'm talking about Blacks, Asians, and if I talk of Asians, Chinese, Indians, those from Southeast Asia, like the Malays and all that. And gradually, if you look at the statistics, these minorities are becoming more in the professional courses that traditionally were the preserve of the whites. So I was having a conversation with my son who is in Southampton Sloan currently. And I was asking him, Kojo, you're doing mechatronic engineering. What percentage of your class is white in such a prestigious university? And he was like, no, the coloreds and minorities are more than that. And that has been going on for a while and is increasingly becoming a concern. So what do I mean by that? If you look at the strict definition of the far right, you'd realize that we are white working class. And at the start of the program, I was listening to you where you played a tape where a lady was saying that it's almost becoming an antecedent to be white and working class. And the conversation hasn't gone on properly because in the minds of the white and working class, sometimes they believe rather wrongly that, say, if I was to leave my job or a doctor was to leave their job simply because they are white and minority, they would be put in that position. But the answer is it's not true, because even though they are unemployed people in the white and ethnic minorities, there are still jobs available in, say, the NHS, which cannot be filled because they do not have the skill mix to fill it. And that brings me to the question you asked, that how does it feel? Yesterday, I made a post on Facebook. The irony is, when all these riots go on, people get injured. And in the UK, when you get injured, whether you are arrested or not, the police have a duty of care to first and foremost seek care for you before whatever action will be taken, because it's a fundamental human right. The irony is, when these people are being brought into the hospitals or the accident and emergencies, often they are coming into direct confrontation with ethnic minority health professionals. be it blacks, be it Asians, be it Chinese, some who are British by birth, some who are migrants. The problem going on the streets, unfortunately, is the fact that once they see you as a minority and the riots are going on, they are trying to get at you. So it doesn't even matter whether you were born in the UK or you are British from birth and all that. So when they come into hospital, the irony then is they don't refuse care, which is a bit of cognitive dissonance. When they come in, the very people they are trying to thwart, and that was why I gave the background to say there are employment gaps in the NHS. These people cannot fill it. But when they get into healthcare as well, they don't refuse care. When they go to the pharmacies, they'll take their care. When they saw a nurse who's a minority, they'll take their care. Interestingly, when they've gone into the security or let's say the legal system, because the government is now clamping very hard on them. I mean, prosecutions are taking weeks. The courts have been sitting over the weekends and other things. They are also coming into contact with prosecutors who are ethnic minorities, some blacks, some Asians. I mean, I've got friends who work in the Crown Prosecution Service, some at the level of directors, who are Ghanaians. And they are coming into contact with them. Then when they get into prison as well, they are coming into contact with prison guards who are ethnic minorities. So there is a big conversation to be had about this whole misconception that their problem is because migrants are taking their jobs, because that is the heart of this conversation. And I think that is a conversation that hasn't been had properly. And so a few people are selling half-truths to them thanks to social media, and they're getting them to riot. But what's becoming more serious, Kojo, is the fact that now you are getting the anti-far right also stand up to them. So in a lot of the riots we're seeing now, you're seeing people, especially Muslims, who are trying to protect their mosques, people who are pro-migration, who are standing up to them. So sometimes you find a face-off with the far right and those who are against them and the police in the middle. And that is where it's getting cagey. So for me, as it stands now, the best bet is like His Excellency said, if you can, you are not out on the streets, say after 7 o'clock in flashpoints, because the flashpoints are known and they are being made public. And eventually, what I see happening is because the government is clamping down, a lot of the instigators, be it on social media or directly, would be arrested and put behind bars. And the coordination would break. When it breaks, the riots will stop. But then more importantly, the conversations as to why this misconception exists in the far right would then need to be addressed properly. That is how I see it.
Okay, stay with us, Kwame. I want us to cross over to Nigeria and pick up the latest on the happenings there. Amina Tairu hosts a talk show there and is also a content creator. Amina, thank you for your time with us this morning. Maybe you can start off by telling us exactly what started all of this.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Well, the Nigerian protests, it's something that I would say has been long overdue, starting from, tracking back to the NSAS that actually claimed quite a number of lives, where Nigerians are calling for a police reform. Also, the hardship that was being, meted by the Nigerian police that led to a lot of corruption. So back to where we are right now. The protest basically is about, ending bad governance. It's saying that the country is broke. At the same time, the country has a lot of money to spend around. There's food crisis, people finding it difficult to eat, people finding it difficult to, find shelter, because shelter is also now very, very expensive. And then let's look at the minimum wage, which the federal government just signed into bill, 70,000 naira. That is even less than $50 of today in Nigeria. And you can't even afford to buy a bag of rice with it. And we know the level of family. When it comes to, family unit in Nigeria, we're not talking about just father, mother. You're talking about father, mother, children. So any 30,000 naira, which we're still earning, by the way, because the 70,000 naira, you start to earn it by this month. You're looking at also transportation. You're looking at the fact that you'll be spending 1,300 and buying fuel, which has a domino effect on all, every other thing in terms of food, shelter, healthcare, just name it. So yes, that is actually the bedrock of why this protest, hit Nigerians.
Right. So
we couldn't just take it anymore. People are dying. Regular, yes.
So it's the high cost of living, basically. Right. Now,
high cost of living.
Now, how is your government explaining the high cost of living? What explanation have they given for the way things are going in Nigeria?
Well, when this administration came into power, the first thing they did was to remove fuel subsidy. And we all know that fuel subsidy is a tax that the government pays on behalf of the people so that the people don't have to pay so much at the end of the day. Now, the government is still bent on that they won't bring back fuel subsidy and that they're giving grants, to Nigerian youth. And the question that the youth are asking, who are the Nigerian youths that have collected these grants? Because the government, the federal government gave a speech, and what he said was, they are working. You're working, but Nigerians are not feeling the impact. We're not feeling it. It's not directly, impacting on the cost of living. So the government right now, they just said, stop protesting. It's like, we've heard you. We are working. Fuel subsidy is not coming back. So it didn't go down well with Nigerians, with most Nigerians. It didn't go down well at all. The government's just ignoring the people right now.
Right. So you would say that the removal of that subsidy on your fuel was one of the big events that sparked the unrest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The removal of fuel subsidy, like I said, it has a domino effect on everything. So we're now paying high cost fuel. We use petrol. We don't have power. There's no constant electricity in Nigeria. So whatever you do, you have to buy power. You have to buy fuel. So if there was constant supply, if you take off fuel subsidy, we won't feel the brunt. But right now, the mass are the ones at the receiving end. So the fuel subsidy is the major cost. Right. And that is because Nigeria also doesn't have constant power supply.
Now, in Ghana, there are some difficulties in our economy as well in terms of, cost of living. But the government points to the global situation, the effect of COVID and the Ukraine war as some of the reasons why things are hard here. Are you having the same sort of communication from your government, that there are external forces beyond their control that are causing some of the difficulties?
Well, yes. That was communicated. But communication is about comprehension, right? The government is not communicating rightly. Everybody knows that there is a global crisis. But Nigeria seems to be a country that is hard hit. And that is because there are no proactive measures. Now, the government talks about palliative, sharing rice to Nigerians. How is that going to alleviate the sufferings of the masses? Sharing wheelbarrows to people. How is that going to help someone feed the family? Ghana is facing, a global crisis too, just like every other, country in the world, but it is not as bad as we have it here in Nigeria. That's what we're saying. There are a lot of corruption taking place, within the system, and that has not been nipped in the bud yet. So, like, I could say that yesterday, the federal government said they signed 570 billion naira grants, right? And they're sharing it to the governors. So youth to alleviate the suffering of the youth. Who are the youths that will have access to that fund? I'm a youth. I don't have access to it. There's so many people that I know who don't have access. So who are the people sharing this money? How are the people getting these amounts of palliative that they say they are giving? Social scheme. Who are the people getting it? So they can be doing something and it's not getting to us. So that simply means that the government is not communicating rightly to the masses. And that is why the protest is still ongoing. You need to see what is happening right now in northern Nigeria. It's disheartening. Just yesterday, a military personnel, what should I call it, mistakenly fired at a peaceful protester. just because he was trying to, ensure that there was peace and calm within the environment. So they're not communicating rightly to Nigerians, really. That's why the protests will continue to hit.
Have there been any casualties?
Of course, there have been casualties. I just mentioned that yesterday someone was fired, I think in Kaduna or thereabout. I'll get that fact right. We've had over 60 persons lose their lives.
60?
But yeah, it's more than 60. And then we have 135 people arrested. Well, you can also look at the fact that, during protests, there are other people that come with their own hidden agenda to just, wreak havoc within the system, right? So that is also, what myself and some of my colleagues here, and of course, the military and the Nigerian police, the law enforcement agencies are also saying that there are people, there are hoodlums who are taking advantage of this protest to wreak havoc.
How is government responding? I mean, does it seem as if they are going to buckle to the pressure? Are there plans to restore the subsidy, for example?
Well, the federal government, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, said that subsidy is gone and is not coming back. So that's one, there's nothing we can do about it. So, but we're still waiting to see if they're still going to have another speech. There's been different security meetings, NEC meeting, which is the National Executive Council meeting, ongoing. So we're waiting to see what happens again, at least by Friday in Nigeria.
What are some of the specific demands of the protesters?
Fuel subsidy. We want price of fuel to reduce. We want constant power supply. We want food security. We also want insecurity gone, because those are the things that are hampering on the progress of Nigeria.
Right.
Once you take that out, Nigerians, we know how to find source of livelihood. Just give us power. Give us constant electricity and then we're good. We don't have that. So even they did something recently, which technically has a good effect on the power supply in most parts of Nigeria, but the cost in which you now buy this unit for electricity is more than what you're even earning in a month. So it is not sustainable. You're giving us power, but we're paying through our noses for it. So these are the things. If they can give constant power supply and security, even if they don't remove first off, just give us constant power supply and make it affordable for Nigerians. Most people are going to go back. In fact, they will return back to their homes.
Right. How many more days of protest are expected?
Well, we don't know that for sure. We don't know that. The North has practically taken this to heart. The southeastern region are also joining in on the protest. Southwestern part is still very calm. We don't know how long the protest will last. Well, yesterday I was mentioning somewhere that Jigawa, one of the northern states, joined in on the protest yesterday morning. So we have people coming in. And that, I would say, also, we liken it to most of the protest that is going around the world right now. In Bangladesh, in the UK, even though it's a pocket, different Venezuela, we have different parts. So it's more like a motivating factor to say, if they can do this, to have good governance. And then, of course, what happened in Burkina Faso, even though I don't want to liken it to what is happening right here in Nigeria, people just want to live happily and freely. We want to be able to take charge of our lives. We're not in charge of our lives right now in the country. And that people don't want that. The blacks don't want that.
Amina, thank you for the happenings. Kwame, before we take leave of you, Kwame, tell us about the sentiment among Ghanaians. I mean, are you finding them suddenly a bit more enthusiastic about returning home? Do they feel less at home in the United Kingdom or not?
Well, thanks. That would be a very tricky question for me to answer because I think that the social circles I move in are a bit biased, considering that most of them are professionals. And for those people, though this is going on, and it gives them a bit of anxiety, because when you have kids, you never know where your children will be playing and something could happen to them. They are not really talking. This is not a trigger point for them to say, you know what, I'm packing my bags and baggage and going home. And for a lot of them, however, they are like me. They are partly in Ghana and partly in the UK. So it's not to say that when you listen, because I also take time to listen to Ghanaian radio stations and other things in the UK, when you listen, you get the sense that, yes, there's a lot of anxiety going on, because for a lot of people who do jobs, who have to work in the night, in cities where there are riots and other things, it's become unsafe for them to go to work. So for them, there's some anxiety. But you also must bear in mind that for people like that, who are what normally people would term economic migrants, the question then becomes, what are they returning to? So it's a chicken and egg situation regarding, do I just up sticks and leave the country because of what's going on? And the other thing is, as I said in my earlier submission, you would realize that these things have a cyclical antecedent. I talked about the ones that were happening around the 91, 92 when I was a student. I talked about what was happening in 2004, 2005 when I just started practicing as a professional. And there was the 2011 riots, and this one has come back. So there's a cycle. And every time the system seems to be able to deal with it and life moves on. And that's why I'm saying that this time, as a country, ethnic minorities, the white majority, etc., a real migration conversation would have to be had. Otherwise, this cycle would not get broken. But I bring in the cycle because when these cycles have happened, it's not led to mass return of migrants to their countries of origin. And I doubt this one is going to be any different.
Okay. Well, I thank you, Kwame, for that update, and we'll certainly keep an eye on happenings as they unfold. We appreciate you. Kwame Sapon Asidu, D&D Fellow on Public Health for CDD Ghana.